Oh, geez. My room is a little bit of a mess here. Why is there a sideways zenith over here? Why is my Sony Color Watchman over here? What's going on? What are you doing here? Did you make this mess? Are you trying to play Sega Genesis without me? Are you trying to say something? Well, too bad. That's what you get. It's much better now. Alright, how's it going, guys? So my name is P017 or PO17, whichever you prefer to call me, and welcome to my new video, talking about this JVC TM-131SU video monitor. Now, if you guys have previously watched my JVC TM-A13SU video monitor that I made a video of quite some time ago, this video in particular will be kind of similar to it, because this monitor right here is actually quite similar to that TM-A13SU, and just judging by the name, you can kind of infer that. But this, of course, is a 13-inch CRT video monitor. It's a little bit older than the A13SU. That kind of explains its a little bit older look. But we're going to be going a little bit into detail in terms of the overall appearance, the inputs, everything like that, and of course, the picture quality and how that looks, because that, of course, is the most important thing when looking at a nice little CRT. So without further ado, before we go ahead and load up Sonic the Hedgehog, let's go ahead and take a look at everything surrounding this set. So let's start with the front. This, of course, like I mentioned earlier, is the JVC TM-131SU color video monitor with the little power LED there, the nice little JVC logo, and your power button here. Over here, it's a little messy, unfortunately. This is how I got it. But if you didn't know, this is where all your small adjustments are. So this, of course, tells you that this is your tint, color, brightness, and picture, otherwise known as contrast, with the little knobs and the little potentiometers in there to adjust if need be. Over here is your volume, as well as your input select for input A and B, which gives you video and YC, otherwise known as S-video, and we'll take a look at that here in just a second. But that's all really for the front. Aside from this being a curved slot mask tube that is 13 inches big, or visible. This tube in particular is made by Philips/LG, whereas my TM-A13SU had a tube made by Thai CRT. So it's a little different tube, but overall both of them actually kind of look identical to each other. Over here on the side, this is where you get your one mono speaker that's side-facing. The TM-A13SU's was front-facing, so that's kind of a little bit of a negative on this, because you do get a little bit of a weirdness where you hear it out of your left ear, but not so much your right. Back here, this is how the TV, or not the TV, but the video monitor shell looks like, and it looks identical to a TV, and that's because, well, if you look right over here, this is actually where an antenna would go if you were to hook analog TV or cable to this thing, if you wanted to get channels over RF. And yeah, I don't know if it was used in any set, but I figure it was, just because this has been reused for the video monitor. But back on here, this is where you get your JVC model number, so it's a TM-131SU, made in August of 1997. Down here is your two composite inputs via BNC connector with two composite outputs as well, and two mono audio inputs, two mono audio outputs, and your S-video connector. Now you also get that little switch right there. That just says open or 75 ohms. That's just terminating the input to ground if need be, or, sorry, not ground, but with a 75 ohm resistor, so you don't blow out your color. So if you get one of these and you notice everything is all blown out, check that switch right there to see if it's turned up to 75 ohms instead of open, and that might do the trick. But other than that, the other side here doesn't really have anything of notice, and that's pretty much it in terms of the external view of it. So let's go ahead, fire this thing back up, and take a look at the picture quality on it. Alright, now we got Sonic the Hedgehog playing on here. So this, of course, is 240p, and as you may have noticed, this is through S-video. So that's pretty cool. So if you watched my previous video that I made on the Sega Genesis S-video box, which I hooked up my Model 1 to, this is basically doing the exact same thing, aside from one difference. This is not running on my Sega Genesis Model 1, this is running on my Model 2, because I got an adapter from a person I know from the CRT Discord that I'm in, who gladly made it for me and shipped it over my way, and now I have S-Video for my Model 2, which is really cool. But overall, the picture quality looks really, really good. It doesn't have super defined scan lines, but that's just because A, it's a slot mask, and B, it's not a very high-res tube. I estimate this between about 300 to 320 TV lines, the same as the JVC TM-131SU. But even though it's a pretty low resolution in comparison to a lot of like Sony PVMs and stuff, the picture it gives is still absolutely outstanding and will pretty much crush any other consumer set in terms of its looks, especially for its size. The other benefit, of course, is having S-Video, where most consumer sets of this size won't even have that. And for the most part, if they don't have S-Video, and it's a newer small set, it'll usually have component. The only ones that I know that do have S-Video are Orion, Toshibas, and JVCs of this size, but they're Orions. They're not a video monitor like this. Also, the picture, the geometry, convergence, everything like that is really good on this. For the most part, the screen is almost centered, I would say. I couldn't exactly center it perfectly, just because there are very little adjustments to be made on this tube, or that you can actually do. So this one in particular, you can only really adjust vertical size for the screen, whereas the A13SU, you can only adjust horizontal position. So every other adjustment made, I had to go by the convergence rings, funny enough, when I was reconverging this thing. You can mess with the purity rings on this thing to shift the screen position a little bit. However, your results may vary, because if you shift it too far, you start getting impurities on the screen, meaning there will be certain colors and certain spots that don't look right. But this one was able to handle it pretty good, so I'm very glad I was able to actually shift the screen over and make it look pretty solid. But as you can see here, very nice. So, like I mentioned earlier, it doesn't have super defined scan lines or anything like that, but it is still really nice in terms of its picture quality. So I highly recommend this for 240p, and because it doesn't have super wide scan lines or anything like that, 480i also works really well on this set, just because you don't really see any sort of interlacing flicker that you would see on a very sharp high-end set that has very widely gapped scan lines. So that is a pretty big benefit, and part of the reason too why I don't mind having a lower resolution tube like this. But that's pretty much it. We'll go ahead and take a look at 240p Test Suite now on Super Nintendo to finish off this in terms of its image quality, and then I'll talk more about do I recommend this and kind of some of the things to go over with this set. Alright, so we are now on 240p Test Suite. Of course, this is through my Super Nintendo via S-Video, and as always, we'll go ahead and take a look at the monoscope pattern just to see how the overall picture looks like. So as I mentioned, I tried getting it centered pretty good. It's not perfect, but it's pretty alright, especially for where it sits at on this set, so I actually don't mind it being sat right here. Looks pretty good. Overall, the convergence is pretty good as well. Now, I did take some time to actually add some convergence rings on this thing to actually make it a little bit better, but I do quite like it. And typically speaking, these video monitors will tend to have better geometry and convergence compared to consumer CRTs, just because they tend to be made with a little bit more of a higher standard. Thus, you get a nice picture. Over here on the grid pattern, just to take a look at that as well. It's very nice, and in fact, we'll even zoom in here so I can show you kind of how the scanline detail looks at 240p. So like I said, it's pretty good. It actually is pretty noticeable how it looks like on screen and of course through video. You can actually see the little lines going through there via 240p. So it's not too bad, I would say. Go and do video tests over here. Oh, jeez. That was pretty crazy. This, of course, is little Donna and how she looks like here via S-Video. Not too bad, I'd say. So, like I said, overall, for 240p, it's a really good look, and I highly recommend it. Alright, so as I just mentioned, I highly recommend this CRT, both for 240p and 480i gaming. So that means stuff like the Super Nintendo, of course, is up to the GameCube, PS2, everything like that. Works really well on the set, especially through S-Video, and composite's not too bad either. So, overall, that's pretty much all I got with this. So if you do find one of these, and it happens to be a pretty decent price, go ahead and pick it up, because it will do you pretty well, especially for its cute little portable size. It's also quite light too, so you can actually take this around with relative ease to your friend's house, to any sort of tournaments, anything like that. Especially if you're playing like Super Smash Bros. Or whatnot. This is pretty good for that as well. But yeah, overall, this sort of budget video monitor is still really good, and like I said, I recommend it over any sort of consumer set, especially if you can get it for a good price. You don't always have to look for like a super high-end Sony PVM or anything like that to fulfill your needs. Even something like this can do you super well. So that's pretty much all I got. Thank you so much, guys, for watching this video and enjoying taking a look at the JVC TM-131SU. But other than that, I will see you all in the next video.